Now it's a huge pleasure for me to announce Eleonore Witt-Dörring. She is the head of CSPII in Austria. CSPII is the Center for the Studies of Political Islam International, an organization founded by a mathematician called Bill Warner, Dr. Bill Warner. I think you will tell a little bit about CSPII later. Thank you very much, Norli, for coming. Please start your speech.
Reverend Fathers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome also from my side. There is even a Reverend Father who read the whole biography of Muhammad, Father James. I don't know where he is now, but it is very impressive for me that he read the whole life biography of Muhammad. So I want to introduce to you also my colleague, Dr. Bernhard Zimburg. He will speak after my speech a bit about the human rights and the Cairo Declaration of Human Rights in the Islamic countries. I'm very happy to be here with him today. And I'm still under the impression of yesterday's lecture. For those who were not here, it was Gabriele Kubi who spoke about the propaganda and the myth of democracy. Islam, with its very political and totalitarian ideas, seizes the opportunity now. A weak, culturally damaged and destroyed society is easy to conquer. I ask myself, have Klaus Schwab, Soros, and all the other great minds considered that migration not only transports malleable people, but also ideas? These are the ideas we are talking about this morning. Yeah, my name is Eleonore Witt-Dörring. Thank you, Alexander, for introducing me. The Center for the Study of Political Islam is an international research and education organization which is dedicated to Islamic politics, how Islamic politics impacts our societies and our lives. And the content of today's lecture is, of course, Islam, and why it is important to know the life of Muhammad. The first part is our definition of political Islam, under quotation mark, the life of Muhammad, and the principles of Islamic ethics, also based on Muhammad's life. When you talk about Islam, the first thing you hear is that Islam is not Islam. There are many branches: Sunnis, Shiites, Sufis, Hanafites, Malikites, Salafists, Alevites, Alawites, Ahmadiyya, and 12 Shiites. What you see here are the law schools of the Sunni Islam. Here I want to mention that the main part of the Islamic community worldwide belongs to the Sunnis. You see also Afghanistan is in the middle of the Sunni law schools. And what you see here are the Shiites. For us, the most known country maybe is the Iran. Yeah, and when you go in the debate, then you hear moderate Islam, radical Islam, Euro-Islam, Islamism, fundamentalistic Islam. Many people talk about the different interpretations of Islam. So these terms have one thing together: they are not defined according to the Islamic texts, so they are also misleading a lot. We use the term political Islam, and this term is defined by the Islamic texts themselves, as you will see in this lecture now. Dr. Bill Warner, as Alexander also mentioned him, he is now 80 years old in Nashville, Tennessee, and he created this scientific method. We only use the source texts for our research and for our education. That's Quran, Sirah, and Hadith. You will see a lot of statistical analysis. We do not stick on opinions. We study the content of the teachings and we connect them to the events of the past and of the present. All the results which you will see in this presentation are reproducible. That means please go into the research yourself. Please go in these texts, study them, and you will discover that it's very enlightening. Now we turn to the main experts on this topic, and I guess you have an idea who are the experts on Islam. If you need to know something about Islam, who would you turn to? Most of us, we turn to the authorities of Islam. So in Austria, the government turns to the head of the Islamic organization in Austria. Others turn to religious teachers, to imams, or to your neighbor who is a Muslim. So you can turn to many people. But as I said, we do not stick on opinions. So we turn today to the main experts, and these are Allah and Muhammad. Everything about Allah you find in the Quran, and Muhammad, who is one of the best documented people of the world, you find everything in his Sirah, which is his biography, and the Hadith. These are the traditions. We will come to these texts later. These three texts we call the trilogy. And yes, now we can ask ourselves, is this trilogy about religion or about politics? As I said, we connect it to what happens, to the events, what happened historically and now. That's how we do our research and our education. What you see here is a statistical analysis. You see the whole content of the texts of Islam. And interesting is that only 14% is about Allah, is the Quran, and 86% is about Muhammad. You see, 26% is his Sirah. The Sirah is an 800 pages book, really his life story from the beginning to the end. You can study it. We, for our research, we used the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, which was written 150, 200 years after Muhammad's death. It's very enlightening to read it. I really suggest it to you. And the Hadith. You have to imagine these are stories who everybody can understand, these life stories of Muhammad. Stories from his life in every single situation. And this is like a dictionary. There are over 607,000 hadiths, and they are collected in different collections. They are called the Hadith Collections. And they are divided in reliable, not so reliable. So you have to find out which hadiths are sahih, very reliable, and that's the collections which we use and the single stories which we use. Mostly these are the hadiths al-Bukhari, Abu Muslim, Abu Dawud, and there are around 7,000 which we use for our research here. And now, what do we call political Islam? So more than half of these texts, 64% of the Quran, imagine 64% of the Quran, 81% of the Sirah, and 37% of the traditions, the hadiths, are dealing with the non-Muslim, the Kafir. I will come to the definition of the Kafir later. So that's what we call political Islam, because it's dealing with us. And why are we dealing with political Islam? Because it deals with us. And over half of the texts are dealing with us. Let's go to the very foundation of the Islamic doctrine. What you see here is the Shahada. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. If you say this creed, this is the Islamic creed, if you say it twice before 2 Islamic testimonies, you are converted to Islam. And you see in the creed our 2 experts, Allah and Muhammad. Yeah, before we go into the depths, I want to show you the 3 views of Islam. I do this based on an example out from the Sirah. This is a summation of 1 page in the Sirah. In the Sirah it is written, in Medina, Muhammad sat all day long beside his 12-year-old wife while they watched as the heads of 600 to 900 Jews were removed by sword. Their heads were cut off because they had said that Muhammad was not the prophet of Allah. Look how it looks in the real Sirah, in the translation. Then the apostle went out to the market of Medina and dug trenches in it. Then he sent for them and struck off their heads in those trenches as they were brought out to him in batches. Among them was and so on and so on. Yeah. So what is it? According to the Islamic view, it is a perfect divine act. Nevertheless, if the individual person likes it or not, Allah and Mohammed ordered it. The second point of view is the Kafir-centric point of view. It's the non-Muslim point of view, and according to that, it's a violent crime. You can also say ethnical cleansing. And that's the view we use, because it's the only view which is not submitted to Muhammad and Allah. There is a third, I would say, problematic view. It's the apologist point of view. These are Islamic apologists who do not know the teachings, who do not know the doctrine, but they apologize Islam. They say, for example, and I guess you have all heard that, in all cultures there was violence. We should never judge on that. It's only a historic event. But what the apologists do not see is that it's in the doctrine. It was valid before, as we have heard, 600 to 900 Jews were, the head was cut off. It is still valid now, as we see in many countries, and one example is the beheading of the teacher in France, and it will be valid in the future. So there is no reconciliation under these views, and you can choose your view. So for today, we choose the Kafir-centric point of view. The Quran. Quran, complete, perfect, immutable for all times. Indeed, it is we who sent down the Quran, and indeed, we will be its guardian. Maybe some of you have read the Quran, or have tried to read it, or read parts of it. If you read the Quran, you will immediately discover you have analytical problems, because the surahs are not ordered in chronological order, they are ordered lengthwise. The longest surah at the beginning, the shortest at the end. It is missing the context. There are missing the instructions, such how to do the 5 pillars of Islam. And there are a lot of contradicting messages in the Quran. So it's quite confusing if you read it without knowing Muhammad's life. If you know Muhammad's life story, the Sirah, if you have read it before, and then you can easily understand the Quran. In this lecture, I will show some connections of Quran and Sirah of Muhammad. Yeah, also for the contradicting messages, Muhammad is the key to understand. There are 89 verses saying that Muhammad is the best example for everybody. Don't worry, I won't read 89, but I will give you one example. There has certainly been for you in the messenger of Allah an excellent pattern for anyone. If you want to read more, in our webpage you find a detailed list of it. Also, the legal source of Islam by priority is Allah, Quran, Sunnah, the messenger of Allah, an excellent pattern, so Muhammad, his Sirah and his Hadith, and only then the scholarly consensus, the conclusion by analogy and all the other experts. So it is Muhammad who gives us a detailed interpretation of the Quran. There is no historical, critical interpretation of these texts. Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. According to the Islamic texts, all the prophets were Islamic. And then the people came and falsified the texts, and the next prophet came and it was Islamic, and it became Islamic again. This is how it came to the allegations of falsified texts against Jews and Christians. And this is also the source for the hate towards the Jews and Christians. But those who wronged changed those words to a statement other than which has been said to them. So we sent down upon those who wronged a punishment from the sky because they were defiantly disobedient. Yeah, Muhammad is the last in the row. His speech is eternal, is valid forever. It's interesting, this is a quote out from the Austrian curriculum for Islamic religious education, and we will jump over point 1 and 2 because it's Muhammad, the good example, but we will go to point 3. In this topic circle, the students once again deal intensively with the history of the Prophet as a special role model figure and discuss different phases of his life. Nevertheless, we do not know if Muhammad existed or not. There is no archaeological, no historical proof for that, but we have to know his life because he's the best example for a huge community. And everything what I present here in the next slides is out from the texts. So the source are the texts, Quran, Sirah, and Hadith. Nothing is research. So let's go for it. We don't know if he existed, but it's important to know him. 570 after Christ, he was born in Mecca. Mecca was a polytheistic environment, so they worshipped many gods. And Muhammad grew up as an orphan with his uncle Abu Talib, and he became a merchant. And that's how he got to know his later wife, Khadija. And it was Khadija who proposed him to marry him. So she offered him the marriage, and he married her. He was 25 and she was 40 years old, but she was rich, and so it was good for his status. Yeah, in this time the first vision started, and he started to preach the faith to one God. And that's how he became problems and how the conflict started in Mecca, because it was a polytheistic environment. In Mecca there were nearly no Jews and Christians, yeah, and so it came to conflicts. And his uncle Abu Talib, he was like a bit like a mediator in between the Meccans and him. And when his uncle died and his wife Khadija died, the conflicts grew. Muhammad married a 6-year-old girl, Aisha. She was the daughter of his follower Abu Bakr, the later caliph after his death. And that's the time when the story was sent up by Allah that Muhammad flew in night on a flying horse to Jerusalem, and he could take a look at heaven and hell. Maybe some of you know the story. I won't go into detail now, but it was also the time when the satanic verses were revealed or sent down. It would be more correct. I don't know if you have heard from the novel which was written by Salman Rushdie in 1989, which sparked a wave of violence in the Islamic world. Maybe some of you have read this book. What about these satanic verses? So Muhammad was always thinking of ways to persuade the Meccans to accept Islam. It came to him that the 3 gods of the Quraysh was the biggest tribe in Mecca, could intercede with Allah. So the Meccans were happy about that, and there were even some moments of worship together at the Kaaba. But later, Muhammad said that he deceived these surahs by Satan. So it was not Allah who sent it. And when he said this, there was no reconciliation with the Meccans anymore. The conflicts grew, and it came to the second part of his life. Mecca, we can see it as the first phase of his life, and now the second phase starts with his hijrah, the Islamic migration from Mecca to Medina. Please be aware, the Islamic calendar starts here in 622 with the hijrah, with the Islamic migration. You should be very aware of that. Yeah, and Muhammad changed. He was not only someone who preached, now he became a warlord, he became a political leader, he became a lawmaker. He consummated the marriage with Aisha when she was 9 years old in Medina, and he started raids on Meccan caravans. Maybe you have heard that in Islam the war is always defensive. So these raids on Meccan caravans are called defensive raids. Why? Because the Meccans did not accept the faith which Muhammad was preaching. So they didn't accept Muhammad. That's why these raids are seen defensive. It's important also. Medina was completely different to Mecca. In Medina, there was a huge Jewish community. More than half of the population was Jewish. And so Muhammad changed. It came first, before the Jews, it came to the Battle of Badr, which is very important. In every Islamic school teaching, you will see that it's educated there. It's a battle which changes the world forever. That's what is written in the Sirah. And the Islamic armies won. Nevertheless, they were in the minority. How important these events are still now shows, for example, that now in Afghanistan, a special air force is called Badri 313. So we really have to study the processes of the expulsions closely and of these battles, because they are still considered exemplary today. Yeah, what happened now? Muhammad besieged and expelled all the Jewish tribes because they didn't accept him. The first was Banu Qanuqa. They were golden and silver weaponsmiths, and Badr here. And then it came to the Battle of Uhud. It was a setback for Muhammad. I want to read it from the Sirah because it's too interesting how they see a setback. So this is a summation of the surah, of the Sirah of Muhammad, Ibn Ishaq 586. The Muslims had lost because they did not obey Muhammad's order. The Quran says that the success that the Kafirs experienced was temporary. They would grow in their evil and be punished. Allah would not leave the believers in this state. But this trial would separate the weak from the strong. Those who have wealth should spend it on jihad. Yeah, it came to the expulsion of the next Jewish tribe, Banu Nadir. And here I want to connect Muhammad's Sirah with the Quran. So if you open the Quran and you read the surah, it's 59:5, then you read, whatever you have cut down of their palm trees or left standing on their trunks, it was by permission of Allah, and so he would disgrace the defiantly disobedient. So what you can't understand it. If you read it in the Quran, you have no idea why it is there. But if you know, at that time there were Arab war laws which ensured that livelihood of the people is guaranteed. So it was strongly forbidden to burn or to destroy the livelihood of the people, the plants. So, and as you have seen, the legal sources, Allah is the highest source. So Allah sent down this Quran surah, and so Muhammad could burn the palm trees and expel this Jewish tribe in this way. It came to the Battle of the Trench. We have heard the quote before, and the third Jewish tribe, Banu Qurayza, was besieged. All the men, 600 to 900, were beheaded, and the women were sold as slaves. It's very important to understand that women are seen as a spoil of war, according to political Islam. It's also interesting here because Muhammad asked this third Jewish tribe who should pass judgment on you, and they decided it should be Sa'id, because Sa'id was a Muslim friend of this tribe, and they said Sa'id should pass judgment. So Sa'id came and he said the men should be beheaded, the women sold as slaves, and then it was the will of Allah, and it happened like that. So it's very shortened now. Yeah, going on, Muhammad signed the 10-year treaty, a very famous treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. Why do we have to deal with a treaty 1,400 years ago? Because this treaty established Islam's attitude about treaties to this day. So political Islam makes a treaty if and only if it is in a weak position. As soon as it gets power, you will see what happened when Muhammad got power. He signed this 10-year treaty, so keep it in mind, 10 years. And then he conquered the Jewish oasis of Khaybar. It's in detail in the Sirah. So the leader was killed, a Jew was tortured on Muhammad's order to tell the location of a Jewish treasure, then he was beheaded. In the Sirah it's more in detail. They made a fire on his breast and so on. Muhammad took his widow, Safiya, and married her. So imagine, Safiya was the wife of the Jewish leader of this tribe, and Muhammad killed in Jihad her husband and her father. Then she was spoil of war, and a follower of Muhammad took her because she belonged to him. And Muhammad heard that she was so beautiful. So he bought her for 5 slaves, and then he married her. Okay. A Jewish woman whose family was killed poisoned Muhammad, causing him to fall ill, and he ordered also her killing. Khaybar is the synonym over the victory over the Jews. There are still in Palestine rockets called Khaybar 1, and there is a Khaybar war shout. Khaybar, Khaybar, O Jew, Muhammad's army will come back. I will show you at the end of the lecture that it was heard in Vienna last year. Khaybar is also typical because Muhammad installed there the first dhimmis. Who are dhimmis? Dhimmis are semi-slaves or second-class citizens because Muhammad needed them, because he had his warriors, so he needed someone to work the land and to nurture the whole group. So they could still be Jews and have their faith, but they gave up all their power, and they had a lot of repressions. We will come to that a bit later, but remember the dhimmis, because the dhimmis is a tool of political Islam to conquer non-Islamic societies also until now. So 2 years after the 10-year treaty, Muhammad conquered Mecca. He got enough power, he conquered Mecca, and all idols were destroyed, and those who resisted were killed. There is a list in the Sirah, slave girls who had sung satirical songs, a transcriber, and others. Islamic armies won the Battle of Hunain. In Hunain, this battle is famous because explicitly in this time Allah sent down the message that Islamic warriors may rape captured women. And the spread of political Islam started. Muhammad sent warriors to conquests, and he commanded, because they reached also Christian parts, and that's why he commanded the submission of Jews and Christians. This is a very famous Surah 9:29. Fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which has forbidden by Allah and his messenger. So you see the link to the lawmaker, the Sharia. Nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if there are people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. What you see here is a quote from the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq 973, chapter 973. In a 9-year period, Muhammad personally took part in 27 raids. There were 38 other battles and expeditions, and. This is a total of 65 armed events, not including assassinations and executions, for an average of 1 armed event every 6 weeks. Muhammad died 632, and on his deathbed he cursed Christians and Jews and died in Aisha's arms, and he said, "Expel the pagans from the Arabian Peninsula." And you see, these are quotes from the Hadith al-Bukhari, Sahih Hadith, so reliable Hadith. And he also said, there should be no religion in Arabia except Islam, and that money should continue to be paid to influence the Kafir ambassadors from abroad. This is a quote from Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, 1928 in Egypt. He said, "And when they tell you there is politics, tell them that this is Islam, and we do not know the separation of religion and politics." There we are. Yes, of course, if you are submitted to Muhammad and Allah, Islam is a whole hybrid civilization system with politics, law, ethics, religion, culture, all together. But we as non-Muslims, as Kafirs, of course, we can define politics, and that's our way to talk about it on a political level, not to touch spiritual, individual feelings And yeah, it works, I can tell you. Political Islam spread relentless, since Mohammed, relentless until now, and I want to show you a little bit how this happened. First, there were the Ridda Wars, the apostasy wars. You know, for leaving Islam, it was the death penalty. So the Ridda Wars are campaigns led by Abu Bakr, the caliph after Muhammad's death, to subjugate the Arab tribes that fell away from Islam after the death of Muhammad. Many people wanted to leave Islam at that time, and with this, in this way, it could spread. Here you have the four caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, and then it continued with the caliphs of the Umayyad, the Abbasid, and the Ottomans until the 20th century. And as you know, then political Islam became a bit weak, and I will tell you how it continued. Yeah, a characteristic is that earlier civilizations are being displaced or destroyed. What you see here is a map, and you can see the North Africa. You all know North Africa was Christian, and the Orient was Christian, and Iran was Zoroastrian, Afghanistan was Buddhist, Pakistan was Hinduist. All these cultures were displaced. Yeah, this is the spread of Islam today. What you don't see here, that political Islam spread in many non-Islamic countries. What you see here are only the really Islamic countries. Yeah. This is a map of the OIC, Organization Islamic Cooperation. According to the doctrine of political Islam, the earth was made for the Ummah. The Ummah is the whole Islamic community. And political Islam outlines the concept of territorial division. Countries under Islamic rule are called Dar al-Harb or Dar al-Islam, and countries that are not under Islamic rule are called Dar al-Harb or House Land of War, according to the Sharia code. They are also called Land of the Enemy. It's important to understand it. Please also keep in mind that we are dealing with parallel societies, and this is really according to the teachings. Yeah? The goal of political Islam is the submission. Islam means submission. Yeah? It is he who has sent his messenger with guidance and the religion of the truth to proclaim it over all religion, even so the pagans may detest it. There is a strategy for that, and the strategy is first the Jihad. We will come to that in detail, and the step-by-step implementation of the Islamic law, which is in the Sharia. And what you see here, that is political Islam changes whole countries, whole societies, and you see it's not happening in 4-year periods, political periods, it's happening in centuries. So political Islam thinks in centuries, they don't mind time. The dhimmi status, which was established by Muhammad in Kaaba, you remember, is and was also the key to reach the goal of political Islam. And the second caliph, after Muhammad's death, he made a whole treaty, the Treaty of Umar. So dhimmis, second-class citizens or semi-slaves, had to pay the jizya tax. They were not allowed to build new churches or monasteries. They had always to give food and accommodation for Muslims. They were not allowed to manifest religion in public. They had to wear recognizable clothing, so the Christians blue and the Jews yellow. They were not allowed to carry weapons. They were not allowed to sell alcohol. And criticism of Muhammad is strongly forbidden. Maybe in your mind you discover some events which we had experienced in the past. Criticism of Muhammad we have experienced a lot in the last decades in Europe. And also interesting, there is a prohibition to teach the Quran to non-Muslim children. The homes of the non-Muslims must not be higher than the homes of the Muslims. And dhimmis are not allowed to ride horses. They should only ride on donkeys. I want to go a little bit in detail because this is such an important topic till today. 10 years after Muhammad's death, first 4,000 men, then another 4,000. At the end, it was 12,000 men, 12,000 men of Muhammad's army, let's say, conquered Egypt, Babylon and Alexandria. The population there was more than 1 million people, so 12,000 to 1 million people. And it was not until 1500, so imagine it was 800 years, that the country has also had a majority Islamic population. So they have a lot of time. And the reason for the change is not always war and violence. It's the high tax and all these repressions which you see here at the Treaty of Umar, which, all these repressions lead to the step-by-step conversion for the people. They couldn't afford it anymore to live under Islamic ruling. A little bit more in detail, the subjugated peoples also had to provide people for military service. This is very known in the Balkans and Hungary. Maybe the Janissaries, the Janitscharen, are, I don't know how to say in English, Knabenlese. So they picked out the boys from the Christian families and educated them in an Islamic manner, and then they sent them to Jihad. And also there is also the myth of the Golden Age. The Golden Age of Islam popular science, which is meant from 750 to 1255, ended, in fact, with the whole Islamization of the population. And the Golden Age, and not many people know this, the Golden Age was characterized by the majority of Kafir population. There were hardly any Muslims there. So all the fruits of the Golden Age were mainly made by the dhimmis under the political Islamic ruling in these countries. Yeah, let's go to the huge topic of the Crusades, which are always mentioned. I guess that here in the room everybody is aware that it's not like it is taught in the schools. The Holy Land situation was not different. Pilgrims could no longer visit the holy sites and were subjected to constant raids and ransom extortion. 30,000 churches were destroyed and converted into mosques by the Caliph al-Hakim, including the church, the Grabeskirche. I don't know. The first Crusades was preceded by a call for help from the Byzantine Emperor Alexius Komnenos. Imagine how difficult it was for him to call the Western Pope, because these churches were not united. Yeah? Pope Urban called on Christians at the Synod of Clermont to crusade to the Holy Land. And the fruit of that was that these areas have been protected from attacks for around 200 years. And then Jerusalem fell 1244 and Acre 50 years later. One goal of the Crusades, of the later Crusades, was to put an end to the rampant piracy. So an estimate of 1 million slaves were stolen from the coast of Europe, from Greece to Scandinavia, following the example of Mohammed. Everybody says slavery was always there, but it is in the teachings, in the doctrine of Muhammad's life, Quran, Sirah, and Hadith, it is explicitly and very strongly recommended. The end of the pirates in the Mediterranean Sea came with the funding of Thomas Jefferson's US Navy. Thomas Jefferson, it's an interesting story. Thomas Jefferson was a diplomat at that time. He was not the president. And he met the diplomat of Libya in Tripolis, and he said, what's about with this piracy in the Mediterranean Sea? And the representative of Tripolis said, but it's according to the Quran. In the Quran it is written that we have to conquer the Kafirs. Yeah? And that's why Thomas Jefferson, he bought the Quran, he read it, and that was the birth of the US Navy, so that the piracy in the Mediterranean Sea ended. And it's funny because this Quran, Thomas Jefferson Quran, is still in America, it's still used, and if there was an politician, Islamic politician, they do not swear on the Bible, they swear on this Quran of Jefferson, which is completely confusing because he read it to stop the piracy. But what we have to be aware that to these days now there are pirates in the Philippines of Abu Sayyaf and also at the coast in Somalia. If we have time, I will show you a film about that, but maybe not. Yeah, what you see here is all the military jihad battles from 620 to 1920, the Crusades, 200 years. Yeah, these are the offensive military jihad battles. And here is only in the environment of the Mediterranean Sea, we didn't have the source for the others. And here is a short comparison, just to show a bit. Yeah, and what you see in this graph is also that political Islam became a little bit weaker in the end of the 20th century, and I will tell you what happened then. Yeah, now. So the strategy and tactics of the hybrid warfare changed at that time, and political Islam's power is decentralized. There is no single and no governing individual or organization. The seat of its power are the mosques. Muhammad's life story points this out because the first action, what he did after his hijrah from Mecca to Medina, was building a mosque. Yeah, there was no mosque in Mecca. The first mosque was in Medina. And it was not only a place where they recited the Quran surahs. I explicitly don't say pray, because pray in Islam and pray in Christianity is completely different. So I said it was a place where they could recite the Quran surahs, and it was the seat of the Islamic government, and it was the education center, and from there they organized strategy and tactics, how they spread their politics. Yeah, it's also a huge priority when political Islam enters a Kafir country. The first is building a mosque and putting an authority on this topic in the country. It was when political Islam was weak, and it became more power again in the 50s, 60s. And for example, it was in the 60s that the first mosque was built in Brussels, and it was in exchange with cheaper oil, and so for cheaper oil they could build the mosque in Brussels, which is a huge education center, and we all know where the way leads to in Brussels. It's really a huge problem. Yeah. And the authority which is put there is one authority, they take over the debate over this topic. So if the Kafirs want to know something about Islam, of course they go to the authority which was sent in the country. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why in CSPII we create these maps, and what you see here, that in 1935 there was only one mosque in the USA, and now there are over 3,000. The same in Russia. Nevertheless, which government, nevertheless with democracy or something else, political Islam spreads. In Spain, and now it's Germany. So Germany is the 1955, that's 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020. You see how it's growing. The map of Austria is not ready now. Let's go to the third part of the lecture. These are the ethical principles of political Islam, also according to Muhammad's life. So let's define the Kafir. Who are Kafirs? We do not define it. It is defined by Allah and written down in the Quran. There are over 300 definitions who is the Kafir in the Quran. So Kafirs are non-Muslims and it's not neutral. Indeed, the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah are those who have disbelieved and they will not ever believe. Cursed wherever they are found, they shall be seized and murdered, a horrible murdering. I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieved, so strike them upon their necks and strike them every fingertip. Kafirs can be mocked, hated, terrorized, beheaded, plotted against, must not be befriended. There are 13 surahs who say that Christians and Jews must not be befriended. Kafirs are evil, can be humiliated, can be cursed, and can be persecuted, according to the Quran. There are several categories, of course. It's not always Kafir, that is al-Kitab, but the Christians and the Jews. Kitab is the book. Al-Mushrikeen, the polytheists, and let's jump over all these because summarize it, whoever refuses the Shahada, the Islamic creed, is a Kafir. Jihad. Jihad is the strategy for the spread of political Islam, and it means struggle and effort. It doesn't mean war. And also here you see the Sirah of Muhammad, his life biographies, 2/3 of his biography is about jihad. There is when you go to a dialogue event, and I guess some of you have been there, then you will hear about the greater jihad, which is the spiritual jihad, how to become a better Muslim, what to do to go to heaven. And statistical analysis of the Hadith al-Bukhari says that it's 2% about the spiritual inner jihad, and the lesser jihad is explicitly the violent jihad against the Kafirs, and the Hadith, it's 98% about the lesser jihad. It doesn't exist in the authentic texts, but we have to deal with it because it is used a lot. But according to the text is the jihad of the pen and the word. We will come to that. I told you that the authorities sent in the country, so they take over the discourse and also the writings and everything. The jihad of the money. Maybe you remember what Muhammad said on his deathbed, that the Kafir ambassadors from abroad should be paid. The hijrah, Islamic migration, is part of jihad. And the sword. I forgot the sword and the hijrah. Yeah, that's it. This graph shows that in the first 13 years of Muhammad's life in Mecca, he got 150 followers. Then Islamic calendar starts, and he became a political leader, warrior, warlord, and lawmaker. And in a very short time, he could have 100,000 followers. Yeah, there is a hadith which says, Muhammad said, I have been made victorious with terror. Now I will go quickly through the slides about jihad, and I won't comment them because they speak for themselves. There is a motivation for jihad. Believers who participate in jihad increase their rank. Not equal are those believers who sit at home and receive no hurt, and those who strive and fight in the cause of Allah. The cause of Allah is jihad, with their goods and their persons. Allah has granted a grade higher to those who strive and fight with their goods and persons than to those who sit at home. There is a reward for jihad. The participation in jihad means the direct path to paradise. All previous bad deeds are erased. So those who immigrated or were evicted from their homes or were harmed by my cause or fought or were killed, I will surely remove from them their misdeeds, and I will surely admit them to gardens beneath which rivers flow as reward from Allah, and Allah has with him the best reward. The jihad is the best deed. Someone asked Muhammad, what is the greatest deed a Muslim can do? He said, acknowledge that Allah is the only God and I am his prophet. Then Muhammad was asked, what is the next best deed? And he replied, to wage holy war in the name of Allah. And you did not kill them, but it was Allah who killed them, and you slew not when you slew, but it was Allah who slew that. Do you remember the story of the third Jewish tribe who was the expulsion of the third Jewish tribe in Medina when they could choose a side who passed judgment? So this surah is showing what he did. Fighting is prescribed for you and you dislike it, but it is possible that you dislike a thing which is good for you and that you love a thing which is bad for you, but Allah knows, but you know not. Let's go back to Muhammad's life. Mecca, Medina, Mecca, you already know these three periods. When political Islam is weak, it comes with the message of the peace. It's a Meccan surah, at the end of the Quran, very short. Say, O disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, nor are you worshippers of what I worship. For you is your religion, and for me is my religion. I guess you have heard this a lot. While Muhammad preaches tolerance in public, behind closed doors, he promises his followers dominion over the other Arab tribes and non-Arabs. So he prepared the floor for jihad, but it was in Mecca, it was not violent. It was, you can say it was the jihad of the word. Yeah, I want to connect it now what happens in our countries, and I want to invite you to go in your countries where you come from and you make a research, because this is the goal of our education, that you can connect the doctrine with what happens in front of your door. So last July, this was announced in a newspaper in Vienna. This is the head of the Ahmadiyya. He attaches great importance to mercy towards all human beings, to absolute justice, the equality of women and men, separation of religion and state, to an end to violent actions in the name of religion, and to human rights as laid down in the Quran. The last sentence is true. Yeah. In this time, schools are invited to mosques. It's very peaceful, very beautiful. This mosque is called the Fatih Mosque. Fatih was he was the conqueror of Constantinople, Mehmed II, and when he conquered Constantinople, there were 50,000 dead Christians. So Fatih Mosque for the schools. This is Ibrahim Olgrun, and he was the chief of the Islamic community in Austria. And in the year 2017, 300 imams, they signed a declaration against violence and terror. Please listen to his words.
Wie es unser Glaube gebietet, Toleranz und Liebe predigen und unser Verhalten am vorbildhaften Leben unseres Propheten messen.
Yeah. So it's exactly Muhammad's example, the Meccan time. And I want to say it here, nevertheless, if he does it consciously or not, it's according to the doctrine of political Islam. Maybe he's a tool or maybe he's an actor. So it's not us to judge. The second period, so Muhammad, his hijrah to Medina, he changed in Medina, political Islam gained power. Permission to fight has been given to those who are being fought because they were wronged, and indeed Allah is competent to give them victory. Those who have been evicted from their homes without right only because they say, our Lord is Allah. And slay them wherever you find them, and drive them out of the places when they drove you out, for persecution is worse than slaughter. Not to accept Islam is worse than slaughter. These are pictures of the mosque in Vienna. You all know them, and there are also in other places you will see these places. They point out the function of the mosque, which is not only a place to worship. Yeah, and you see here it is an education center. Yeah, I don't have to say more to that. And this is very interesting, and I want to connect this to the lecture we had yesterday evening for those who were here. Gabriele Kubi, she told in between many other things, she said that there is a method for changing the mindset. Maybe some of you can remember the conversion of the feelings. And I discovered yesterday that political Islam uses this tool perfectly. Yeah? First, there is a propaganda to change the feelings. So there is many positive words, and we call it jihad of the word, or it's called yesterday the method of changing the mindset. And if the propaganda doesn't work, which happens sometimes, then Gabriele said, then it's legally forbidden. There is criticism is prohibited by law. Yesterday she showed up this example by the change of mind towards homosexuals, but this is exactly the same. Look what happens in the Austrian school books. We had a really enlightening school book analysis together, and that's the result. So, Islam a new face. Muhammad began to preach. He proclaimed that all men were equal, that the slaves had to be freed, and that one had to share his wealth with the poor. With this, he made enemies, and he had to immigrate from Mecca in 622. Finally, he gained so many followers that he could return to Mecca. After his death, Islam continued to spread. So, changing the feelings, changing the mindset. Yeah, when political Islam has the upper hand, then when the sacred months have passed, slay the idolaters wherever you find them and take them captive and besiege them and prepare for them each ambush. I am charged with waging war against mankind until they acknowledge that there is no God but Allah and believe that I am His prophet and accept all revelations proclaimed through me. Indeed, Allah has purchased from the believers their lives and their properties in exchange for that they will have paradise. They fight in the cause of Allah, so they kill and are killed. Look at this surah, 9:11. And unluckily, we had this experience also last year in Vienna. O you who have believed, fight those adjacent to you of the disbelievers and let them find in your harshness, and know that Allah is with the righteous. If they repent now, it is better for them, but if they turn away, Allah will punish them with a painful punishment in this world and the hereafter, and they will have neither protector nor helper on earth. Fight them, Allah will punish them by your hands and will disgrace them and give you victory over them. When Muhammad conquered Mecca from Medina, he destroyed all idols. Around the Kaaba, there were 360 idols. There was also Jesus and Mary, and he destroyed everything what was not Islamic. So the destruction of non-Islamic idols is doctrine of political Islam. And if you go in research in Islamic countries, or for example, the people don't know, for example, the Maldives was Zoroastrian and now it is an Islamic country. And if you read in Wikipedia, all the idols in museums were destroyed a few years ago. So when political Islam has the upper hand. Yeah, have you ever asked yourself why the eyes are cut out, the arms and nose are cut off of the Sphinx? I want to invite you to listen to that.
من كل الكفار نحن حين نحكم بالإسلام لن يبقى في قوانيننا ذرة من قانون من غير الإسلام. ليس هذا فقط، ولن نسمح لغير مسلم أن يحكم المسلمين. الشيء أينما وصل المسلمون للحكم يا أحبابنا بأي طريق يصلون لن يسمحوا لكافر أن يحكم المسلمين بعد ذلك. فيش عندنا تعدد بين الإسلام وكفر إحنا، لا في عندنا إسلام، فيش عندنا كفار بحكم الإسلام إحنا. لقوله تعالى ولن يجعل الله للكافرين على المؤمنين سبيلا. أما إذا كان إخوتنا الإسلاميين بدعبوكم بيقولوا لكم نعم نحن نحب تداول السلطة، هذا بيقولوا بتمكنوا حتى يتمكنوا، إن تمكنوا لن يسمحوا لكافر أن يحكم المسلمين قولا واحدا.
Then we jump over the victims of jihad. This is a rough estimate of the numbers of Kafirs who were killed by the doctrine of jihad, as in Quran, Sirah, and Hadith. We will jump over that. And That's important. I said that Quran is contradicting messages, and it's also the life of Muhammad which is contradicting. And this, I would say, this ethical dualism makes it very difficult for us to understand the teachings of Islam. And on one side, dualism is solved in Quran itself by this surah. The later surahs are better or similar to the surahs in Mecca, so we will jump over that now. So the Medinan surahs are better than the Meccan surahs, but there are the contradicting messages. For you is your religion, and for me is my religion. Accursed wherever you are found, being seized and massacred completely. So both is true, both is in the doctrine, both is applied. People use both quotes. And as you have heard before, it's according to the life of Muhammad. It's according to the power of political Islam in an environment. Yeah, this is the Surah 532. It's part of the declaration of the fraternity of our Pope with Al-Tayyib, the chief of the Al-Azhar University. It's the headline of the declaration against violence and terror in 2017 of the 300 imams. And it's here a poster which is placed it's interesting here, not far from here, behind the Jerusalem stairs, beside the synagogue. And you all know this surah. Whoever kills a human being killed all men, and whoever keeps it alive, it is as if he keeps all men alive. It's beautiful, and I guess you have heard it on a dialogue event, but we open the Quran now. For this reason, we have prescribed for the children of Israel. So this surah is directed to the Jews. Whoever kills a human being without committing murder or causing mischief on earth, it is as if he had killed all men, and whoever keeps it alive, it is as if he keeps all men alive. Our messenger have already come to them with clear proofs, but thereafter many of them have truly remained on the earth without measure. So let's read the next surah. But the reward of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and strive to do mischief in the earth is that they may be all killed or crucified, or have their hands and feet cut off in turn, or be banished from the land. That is a disgrace for them in this world, and in the hereafter there is for them a mighty punishment. Yeah, there is the deception. For the benefit of political Islam, Muhammad said, war is deception. The hypocrites wish to deceive Allah, but He will deceive them. We jump over the last. Let not believers take disbelievers as allies rather than believers, and whoever of you does that has nothing with Allah except when taking precaution against them in prudence. So Ibn al-Qasir, an Islamic scholar, very famous scholar, said, we smile in the face of some people, also our hearts curse them. And you should never forget that there is a difference having a friend or being friendly. Yeah, what does the Quran say on Christians and Jews? Christians who believe that Jesus is God are disbelievers, but those who insist that Christ is God and part of His Trinity and who reject the true faith will be punished in hell. I think everybody here is aware that we live in the time of the highest Christian persecution we ever had. We will jump over the Sharia. Please have a look at it. The Sharia is the Islamic law based on Quran and Sunnah, and yeah, there is no freedom of anything in the Sharia. There is an example. Allah, mighty and majestic, sent me as a guidance and mercy to believers and commanded me to do away with musical instruments, flutes, strings, crucifixes, and the affair of the pre-Islamic period of ignorance. So if we were discussing putting down the crucifixes in the universities and school, we are submitting to Muhammad. There is no religious freedom according to the teachings. Yeah, we talked about that with the Rida Wars, and I want to pronounce that this problem is really very much experienced in Austria and Germany still. When the when Muslims want to convert to Christianity, there is the cobra outside the church, and nobody knows in which church they are baptized. And the document for the baptism is not in the digital list. It's a secret paper in the diocese which is closed. Yeah. Their Sharia and democracy is not compatible. About the human rights, Bernhard will tell us a bit more now. And there is no equality of men and women. I think we will go over this topic now. The veiling of the woman. The veil is a distinguishing mark of Islamic women in contrast to slaves and infidels who are considered inferior and sexually available. Kafir women are seen as spoil of war. We are living in the Dar al-Harb, in the house land of war. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers to bring down over themselves of their outer garment. They will be known and not be abused. Yeah. I want to invite you in your countries to go and research how this Islamic doctrine has impact on our Kafir women, yeah? Because we all know that there is a huge impact on Islamic women, but what is the impact on Kafir women? And maybe you have heard of the biggest justice and media scandal in Rotherham alone. 1,400 Kafir girls from the age of 11 were systematically subjugated to gang rape by Islamic perpetrators. And gang raping is increasing in Germany and Austria enormous. We should not ask ourselves these individuals. We should connect the doctrine, the teachings of political Islam with what happens in front of our door. We are not interested in the individual perpetrators. The same with acid attacks, a huge increasing in Great Britain. This is the proportion of Jew hatred texts in the texts. So the Medinan Quran, where the 3 Jewish tribes lived, there's 70% of Jew hatred. Altogether, it is more than in Hitler's Mein Kampf. This is a very famous hadith, and I will show you at the end what we heard last year at the Maria-Hilfer-Straße. And keep in mind Khyber, the synonym over the victory over the Jews. I will stop it for you now. The next video was the same in London. They say, fuck their daughters, rape their daughters, fuck the Jews. So it's according to the teachings. So our wish is the modernization of Islam, but as you have understood now, there are 2 authorities, and these authorities are Allah and Muhammad. So, and these authorities are the texts. So there is it's not possible to modernize that. And this is the beginning of a Friday ceremony. The best speech is the Book of Allah, and the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad. And the most evil thing is to renew it. And any renewal in religion is misguidance, and every misguidance leads to hellfire. Yeah, we will jump over the school books. I will just give you this because this was the first school book which I opened when we started the analysis. And what I read here was, it was the Vienna and the Ottomans, the siege of Vienna. In front of the city walls, the Viennese see 25,000 colorful tents, oxen, people with turbans. They perceived strange smells. The Orient, with its splendor, was stored in front of them like in a window shop, in a shop window. Yeah, yeah. I do not request or advise to read the Austrian school books. Please don't do that. But please read the books of Dr. Bill Warner or go into the authentic texts yourself.